The other day I was doing a suspension video and I zoomed in on my chain at high speed, and I noticed that my chain was hitting the swing arm there as I was flying up the highway, and even when I was at about 30-35 miles an hour I could see it tapping against the swing arm. If the upper part of the chain is slacked and the bottom part of the chain is hitting the swing arm, you're definitely out of spec. So that's an easy way to tell if your chain is too loose. So the next thing to do is to get it right. Now, how did it get this way? Well, this will happen over time. I adjust my chain regularly, and I'm a heavy guy. And the more I ride and the crazier things I do with this bike, the more it gets slacked. So, hey, you just got to do it. So we're slacked at the top of the chain and slacked at the bottom of the chain, and that's tapping. That's not good anymore. So how much am I going to change this by? How would I know? What's the metric here? Well, I'm going to start with a quarter turn on the nuts that are on the back of the tensioner, and we're going to see if that fixes things. So here we go. Normally I would loosen up the axle pin first, but I think what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to unsnug these a little bit and go from there. There is a little adhesive on each tensioner. That is silicone, so that is easy enough to remove. The adhesive on the bolt is the white silicone there. I'm just going to use my fingernail and peel that away. So that's easy enough to remove. See, that comes right off there, and once I start getting the threads going, that's going to move pretty easily. So to remove the silicone glue, and if it doesn't want to go, well, okay, just spin the nut. So these brass nuts on the end are 13s. So that cracked the silicone free. All that does is keep that from spinning on its own. So now that that's free, I can change the tension on that. But before I can do that to tighten up the chain, I want to loosen that nut. I have my 22 and 27 millimeters marked. What I'm going to do is swap them back and forth between the breaker bar and the torque wrench. I'm going to take the 22 millimeter and I'm going to put it on the bolt side of the axle pin. So the nut side is over here. I'm going to use my breaker bar with my 27 millimeter right there, and I'm going to crack that loose. I have the 22 on the torque wrench side and the 27 on the breaker bar side. I'm just going to crack this loose. So that's about a quarter turn there. Half turn. So that's cracked loose now. But it's not so loose that things are going to fall apart. What I can do now is I can change the tension on that. So now I'm going to make the chain tension adjustment change using that inner nut. That inner nut there is a 14. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that a quarter turn. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go clockwise to pull everything out. So here we're going to go 1/4 turn clockwise, and then on the other side we're going to do the same thing. So here we are 1/4 turn clockwise. Now what that should have done is that should have changed the tension on the chain without loosening everything up in the rear end to the point where everything falls apart. You have to be really careful about these. You don't want them falling out of your swing arm. They do get misplaced, they shift, and that's something you want to avoid. So let's go over here now and check our chain tension. See, that's no longer touching the swing arm there, and I have a little tension on the upper part of the chain. So I can use my finger and I can just feel that that's got some tension on it, and that's no longer hitting the swing arm. So now that is back in spec. I'm going to tighten this all up and finish up, and the job is done. Alright, so I have my 22 and my 27. The 22 was on the torque wrench, the 27 was on the breaker bar. I'm going to switch these sockets around, and then I'm going to set the torque up on the torque wrench. My vast memory banks tell me that this is a 72 foot-pounds setting, so I'm setting my torque wrench for 72 foot-pounds. I'm going to put the 27 millimeter on the nut side and the breaker bar on the pin side. Okay, breaker bar on that side. I want to make sure that we don't drop the wrench on my cell phone. Okay, so now we just got to tighten this up. So remember, we only loosen this by about half a turn, right? We didn't want to adjust anything or change anything that could affect reassembly, so we didn't loosen it up all the way. We just loosened it up enough to change the tension on this without bending these plates. So now, what is the last thing that we do? Well, we take our 13 millimeter and we just tighten that back up. Now, you're just going to push with your hand. I'm going to do the other one, and then we're going to add a little silicone glue, and the job is done. Over here on this side, just tighten that up. That's going to take a couple turns. Okay, so we're just going to tension this up. Alright, so I'm not going to put a lot of force on that. Okay, I'm going to come back with a little windows and doors silicone glue and put a dab on that, and then I'm going to put everything away. Whenever you're working with a torque wrench, make sure that you set it back to 0 before you put your tool away. That's really pretty important, otherwise your torque wrench won't work properly. So now that's set back to 0. Apply a little dab of glue right up against the corner of the threads there, and then push it in. And that's good to go. So I still have another dab of glue on my fingers. I'm just going to go to the other side and repeat that. Come over to this side, take that remaining little dab of glue there, push it up against the threads, push it down in, remove the excess, and you're done. When you're doing this work over and over and over, you have to do a sanity check every so often to make sure that you're somewhere in the middle. What I like to do is line that up. Some kind of measuring tool, it doesn't matter what you use. I kind of put the one end right in the middle of the bolt, and then swing the measuring tool to the edge of the swing arm right where the black meets the silver. And I check it over and over and over, and I go, yep, That's about right. Then I go to the other side and repeat the process. So here we are on the other side. I'm going to the middle. Of that bolt. That seems to be a millimeter tighter on that side, meaning that this is further that way. So I'm just going to go back and check it one more time. So we're about a millimeter from the end there. Nope, I must have slipped. That is actually correct. That is about a millimeter from the end. So that actually is fine. Always double check. So we're good. That is actually aligned correctly.